All right, this time around, I'm going to do everything on my Mac. A Macintosh is a Mac OS is very similar to Linux. They're different but same. The default shell is Bash on Ubuntu Linux. Here it's Z Shell, but it's very similar. I've already got NPM and NVM and all the other stuff I need already installed on this Mac and ready to go. It's not that difficult to do. You can find plenty of instructions online. So I'm not going to be using a VM. I'm going to do everything on the Mac. And the objective here is to do the homework assignment for this class, which is our homepage. I'm going to move pretty quickly through this. Remember, you can always pause and replay the video. And if you got questions, you can email me, talk to me in Classroom, or if you want, put a comment down below. So you click the link, and it's a GitHub Classroom, so you have to be signed in, and it's going to create a repository for you. Now, this repository is owned by me, so I highly recommend that you take a moment to bookmark that repository so you can get back to it very easily. Once you've got navigated to this repository, you've got your instructions right here. Read through them, please, and get at it. Now, to get the repository onto your computer, click the green button, grab that, and let's move this out of the way. And now on our Mac, through the terminal or whatever tool you want to use, I want to use my Git utility to get the repository over here. Now, I've created a folder for our class, and inside that folder, I've got some other stuff. I like to keep things organized so that I can remember where to find things. I'm going to use the clone command, subcommand for Git, and I'm going to give it that link that I just copied from that page. So once that's done, I'm going to have the repository right there. There's two ways I can go about doing this. One is to treat this directory, this folder, as the root of our project. And the other option is to make our project inside of this folder. Either way is fine for the homework assignment, but you might find it cleaner or nicer looking if you treated that as the root of the project. To treat it as the root of the project, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a branch. And I'll call this branch React homepage. So if I look at the status of my repository, you're going to see I'm on this branch. And if I list out all the branches that I have two branches right now. I'm on the one that's highlighted, which is React homepage. Once I've done that, if I move out one directory, so I'm back outside the repository, I can use my npm command to create a new project. Read at latest. And I'll give it the name of the directory. Oops. So that's how the command's going to look. And it's going to create a project in this folder using Vite, the latest version of Vite. You do this, it's going to say, oh, you need to install this because it's not already on the computer. So yes, sure. And because that folder is not empty, it's going to say, so do you want to cancel because you've got stuff in there? And the stuff that's in there right now is the README and the authors.txt file. And you can remove the existing files and continue. Remember, it's already in version control. You can always get them back. Ignore the files and continue. So it will overwrite the README file and perhaps other files too. I'm just going to say ignore files and continue. I'm going to pick React, JavaScript, and I'm going to install and run now just to prove to myself things are working out. Because this is running on my Mac, I do not need to run it with the -- host option, so it's accessible over a network. And you can see this is running and it works as expected. So I'm going to move this out of the way for now. And if I go into that directory and I can look, I can see that Vite's created all this stuff. The authors.txt file is a file that I use as an instructor so I can easily figure out who you are. And to create that file or to edit that file, I don't know why I put it over there, put it right here. It's an empty file. All you need to do is put your first name and last name, email address, and your GitHub username. Save it, and you're done. Okay, cross that off the list. One of the other things that we want to do is get Tailwind installed. So we're going to, excuse me, we're going to use npm to install Tailwind CSS into our project using Vite. And now that's done. Great. So if you want, you can always open up another tab, make sure you're in the right place, and just run the development server constantly so that it's just constantly updating as we make our changes. Just switch back to the other terminal tab, and you can open up multiple terminals to do this. And now we want to start editing stuff. I'm just going to open up the whole folder into Sublime Text. This is a really handy thing to do because I can use the navigation bar. Now, you probably are using VS Code. I highly recommend that you use VS Code. VS Code will have the same option. You can navigate through your repository this way. And we want to focus first on our index.css. This is the default one. Remember what I did in the previous video was that I just went to Google Fonts, found some fonts I liked. Here I've got Coromant Garamond, Inconsolata, which is for my fixed width font, and Nudito Sans for my sans serif font. I'm going to import Tailwind CSS, and I'm going to change the options of my theme. So it's using Nudito Sans, Coromant Garamond, Inconsolata. I also need to go to my viteconfig.js and change that so that it's got Tailwind in it. So here we're going to say import Tailwind CSS from Tailwind CSS Vite, and we want it Tailwind. This look nicer. And now we're done. Okay, so we've got our Vite config set up, including Tailwind. We've got it imported. We've got our index.css with our CSS changes, which is to remove the default stuff that was there before, add in our new fonts. We've got 3 fonts there. And now we can start working on our application. So inside of source, and I can follow along over here. Inside of source, you're going to have your main.jsx, your app.jsx, and right now it has the assets folder, which contains the SVG and PNG file that we see over here. Before moving on, I'm going to type git status. I'm going to see that I've modified these guys right here. I modified this one. NPM modified this one and this one. And my philosophy is make a small change, commit, move on. Make a small change, commit, and move on. It's a good idea to do that so that if you make a change that you don't like, there's a way that you can back out of it. So let's go and let's start checking in changes. Let's first look at what was changed in authors.txt. And that's the stuff I added. So I'm going to commit authors.txt with added own name. And then let's see what's the next thing we want to look at. Okay, let's take a look at the readme. Git diff readme.md. All right, so this I had originally had a readme in here which contained instructions for our lab, and now when I ran npm vite to create this project, it overrode it with its stuff. I'm going to copy the readme to say vite readme.md, and I'm going to use restore to restore that readme. So now if I look at the diff, it's the same, and I can come over here and I can see these were the instructions and I can keep them around. This is nice because I might want to look at some of the details that were asked of me to follow along, and later on I can remove these readmes or change it. Doesn't really matter. So let's look at what we've got left. Let's look at that git ignore. All right, so Originally, the project came with this humongous gitignore file, and now it's got a much smaller gitignore file. I'll just, I can always roll back later if I need to. I'm just going to commit this one as is. So I'm going to say git commit gitignore Hashem and say using the Vite generated gitignore instead is. Yeah, you don't really have to write long messages, but it's a good idea that you write some message to yourself so that you know why you've changed these things and committed these things. Now let's go down this list. This file right there, that's something I just created. So git add, git commit with a message, copy the default readme to Vite readme. Not sure if I need to keep this. Note to self, right? All right, now I've got these other things. These are all created by Vite, and I'm just going to add all of them because I want to track the changes in all of them. So sometimes people say git add dot, and I prefer doing things one at a time. So I'm going to add ESLint config. I'm going to add the index.html, package, JSON, package, lock.json, public. And when you do a folder, like public, src, these two are folders or directories. When I add that, everything inside of it that is not ignored by the gitignore will be included. And then I can commit that with a message, git commit to -a, -m. -a means all of these that are scheduled to be added. Great. Okay, so I've made all my commits. Everything's clean. Let's start creating our app. So if I go to app.jsx, you can, well, actually, if I start with main.jsx, you can see it's calling app right there. I'll come over here to app.jsx. I'm going to copy this. Return. Grab that, indent this. Close that up and take a look at this. I'm going to rename this AppX. Do I need to take anything else out? No. So by renaming this AppX and rename, and oh, there's something missing here. All right, so I figured it out. It was a missing slash. I wasn't paying attention. It was right there in front of me the whole time. Anyhow, I've now got a small little app working. I see hello world, and now I can keep going from there. I can remove this because I'm not going to be using it. I can always get back with my with Git, as long as I make small changes and make commits. I don't need these parts here anymore. I'm going to go over to app.css, and I'm going to take out all of this too. And things are still working. So everything's good. Git status. I'm going to git commit -a -m replaced. Oh. Great. Okay, get it status. The structure that I want to do is I want to have three parts. I want to have per our README, Um, a bio, a resume, and a contact form. Let's start by creating those parts. And so I'm going to make a folder inside a source. I'm going to make a directory called components. And I'm also going to make a directory called data. I should have used lowercase data. Move components to be lowercase components. So I've got a new folder called data, a new folder called components. And let's also think about, if we add images, we'll add the images to assets. Don't need to add fonts because those are being imported in via the web. Great, okay. So inside of components, what I'm going to create are 3 components. I'm going to make a bio. I'm going to touch bio.jsx. I want to have a contact.jsx and a resume.jsx. So now in this folder here, I've got those 3 files. Inside of data, and now it's empty. Inside of data, I want to have biodata.js, and I want to have resume data.js. And so I'm going to use these files, the biodata and resume data, to build up those pages. So I can just import the data and draw it out, render it out. Let us build up our bio.jsx. So I've got this previously built. I've got a function called bio. I'm exporting it by default. It's got 3 props: name, biography, and photo. Inside of assets, I'm going to need to have a small image called noImageSmall. And I'm going to log to the console the path to that photo. And it's going to return the image, and it's going to have the name of the person, and it's going to have their biography. So if I add this stuff in here, and let's hit status. So it's not tracking the data directory. So let's look at all this. It's not tracking the data directory or the components directory. Right now in components, it's got those 3 files. Inside of data, it's got those 2 files. I'm going to git add components and git add data. And I'm going to git commit. So that's all ready to go. I come back over to app, and I'm going to change this hello world bio. So let's leave this as the default bio. And you can see not much is going on. So I made a mistake. I know what the mistake is. I got to import it. Great. There's the defaults. I see the console log right there of the name of the file. Let me go into assets. I'm going to copy from someplace else the image that I want to use. And if you want to see what that looks like, it looks like this. It's just a small square. It says no image in it. It's a nice little placeholder to help me out. And if we now reload this page, you can see it loads it up. So how do we get this to work? If I come back over to bio.jsx, I have gone through the Tailwind CSS documentation to put this in a container, and I've used these keywords here to set it up so it's got a background gray and that it centers it and it fills the screen. The image, it picks up the source from that prop that has the alt of using that person's name. In this case, it defaults to Joan. The biography is foobar. That's why I see foobar there. And the photo. I don't need to console log this here. Let's just take that out. Come over to app. Let's try passing in our own props. So I'll say name is equal to Michael. Biography is equal to works hard, and photo will leave alone, and you can see it gets filled out. Now what I'm suggesting that we do is in the bio data, and we just put that stuff in there. Oops. Gonna steal that data. Come over here to data, bio data, and I'm gonna create an object, call it biodata, and it's going to have the field's name, biography, and I need a portrait. And the way I'm going to get the portrait is by importing portrait from, go out one directory, assets, me.jpg. So I need that image. That image doesn't exist, so I'm going to copy it where I have a copy root. Still going to be no image because we haven't imported any of this stuff. So now from this file, this JPEG file, I'm going to import it into portrait. Portrait, this variable comes over here and it is assigned to the key photo. I have an object here and it has three keys: name, biography, and photo. I'm going to save this file, come over to bio.jsx, and I'm going to import from, where I'm going to import bio from, what's it called? What do you call it again? Biodata. Biodata from data biodata.js. Oh, because I'm in the wrong spot. I need to import my data, sorry, from the app. I thought I was in the app.jsx. Over here, I'm going to import biodata. And let's make sure that's looking good. And once I import biodata here, I can now use it. So what's the name that we're using here? Well, name is going to get replaced by biodata. I think name. What's the biography going to be replaced with? Biography is going to be replaced with biodata, bracket, bio, I believe, biography. And finally, the portrait. Well, before we do that, let's save this and see if, oh, did I make a mistake somewhere? Ah, here's the mistake. I forgot to export by default biodata. Forgot to export that. Okay, back in our app. Looking good. This is the name that we had in the biodata file. This is the biography that we had in the biodata file. We just need a portrait. So we look at our function again, and the function takes a photo prop. So we come back over here. Photo is going to be, make this a little wider. Biodata photo. Oh, sorry, portrait. Why portrait? Because, sorry, it is supposed to be photo. There we go. Beautiful. So we've got our portrait, we've got our name, we've got a biography. And we see we're printing out the bio data right there. We don't need that anymore. All right, our next field. Oh, before we move on, let's commit this stuff. So let's type git status. And what have we changed? Oh, wow, we've got 2 new files. So let me add these 2 files that have not been added yet. I'm going to commit those 2 files with the comment now one's a default and the other one belongs to the biography in biodata.js. What's left to commit? Okay, so app, I made a change there. Let's just go out one directory. Added the bio function, and it works pretty well. Then I'm going to I'm going to commit components bio.jsx and data biodata comment. This gotta say it works well. Great. Okay, so everything's been committed. Oops. Now let's keep on going. Let's go look back at our app.jsx. So we've got our bio. The other part that we want to add was resume. And let us open up resume.jsx. And let's just return something simple. Not gonna make that mistake twice. So I made a mistake. Resume export default function. And then we come over to app.jsx. Add this for resume. There's the resume. So we've got that working too. Oops. What have we changed here? Commit app.jsx. All right, made progress. Now let's work on the resume. Our resume is going to be built up from data. And the data that we're going to use will be, well, we have to think what's important for a resume entry. You're going to have education, you're going to have experience, and you're going to have skills. So why don't we create in our data file, we'll call it resume data. And in this, we're going to have education as an object. Whereas actually, it's going to be an array. It's going to be an array. And then we're going to have another array, which will be our experience. Come on board. And we're going to have another array, which is going to be our skills. So far, so good. And in education, why don't we put something that has degree, institution, and years. So this is an example of what I could put in there. We're going to need to have an ID for each one, because you can imagine if I was using a relational database or some other type of database, or I was getting this stuff from some API, everything's going to have an ID. And React components, or React needs to know about some unique identifier, an ID, for each piece so that it knows it has changed or not changed, and it doesn't redraw that part. So here I'm just picking a number, 10, to identify this entry. And this entry, this object has the fields, or sorry, the data members ID, degree, institution, and years. And I'm going to do this 2 more times for the other 2 degrees that I have. And so I've got a PhD, MS, and BS, and I've got the years in there. And that looks pretty good. Let me make sure I didn't make any typos with the commas. With the experience, I'm going to do something similar. Again, every single entry is going to need to have an ID. And here is what I have for what I currently do. And I'll just copy and paste from my little answer over here some other entries. So each entry is going to have an ID, a title, a company, and years. And I've got one for another Cal State Fullerton, for another job, and for some other job for that. Finally, for skills, following the same pattern, I'm going to make some entries for some programming languages. Again, this is an array, and inside the array there's going to be a collection of objects, and each object will have an ID. It'll have the name of the skill and the proficiency in the skill. And I just made this stuff up. You might have your own opinion about how gifted or ungifted I am at any of these things, but it doesn't really matter. It's just the whole point is just to build something up to make a resume. So I've created all this data. And if I ever should want to add something in, so for instance, let's say I want to add another field in between these 2, I'm going to have to make sure that the key is unique. And the reason why I count it by tens, any good basic programmer from the 1970s and 80s will tell you, is so that you can pick a number that's between them. So you can always add something in there and it'll always be in order. What do I know how to program? Basic. Sure. Thank you, GitHub Copilot, for saying that I've got intermediate skills. So once that's saved, I can go back to my resume.jsx and I can start changing this so that it's going to render it correctly. Don't forget, we have to import from in our app.jsx, just like we did biodata, we're going to import in our resume data. If we look at resume data.js, this is the name of it, and I need to export it. So at the bottom, export that. So back over here in app.jsx, I can say resume data from resume data. Then over here, we're going to think of like, okay, I'm going to pass in, I can either pass in that whole variable resume data into this thing, but I can break it up into different parts. So I can imagine that I'm going to have something like education, and that's going to be equal to something. And I'm going to have the education experience and skills. So I'm going to have those fields there. And of course, I broke it, but we'll fix that in a second. And we're going to take the data there, resume data, and we're going to pass education. So resume data had an object in it, or an array in it called education. And I'm going to do the same thing again for experience and for skills. I have to spell education correctly. And then I'm going to come over here to resume.jsx and I'm going to add in those props. And it seems pretty happy. So now we get into how we're going to format this. Well, because these are arrays, it's going to be very easy for us to format them out so long as we've got some functions that could do this for us. So let's start making functions to format our resume. Let's think of the big structure first. So the big structure, let's make it div. And let's start with just doing headline. Fine. Let's just start a headline. Call it resume. And we might want to have something like education. And another headline should be our skills, or sorry, experience. And then another one for our skills. Save this. And we see that shows up. Now, one thing to consider is like, if I want to have, I'm using H2 a couple times here. I'm using H1 once. One thing that I could do is define a function. And with that function, I can pass it in the headline that I want, and it will generate the format that I'd like. And this could be in another file that's pulled into multiple places, or just defined here. And so if I want to redefine this this heading, I would say headline, if that's a prop, is equal to resume. And I could take out this part right here and save it. And now I got this H1 formatted the right way, formatted according to what I've got here. I can also change the formatting at the CSS level. Like I can go back over to my index.css and change the defaults or do something else. But let's do it this way. And let's do the same thing for H2. For H2, we'll make a function. This one takes in a headline and uses this those class names. And let's do the transformation here to education. Let's see how that looks. Looks nicer. And let's do the same thing over here. So just do it all at the same time. Capital H2. Headline is equal to close. There we go. Great. Now, let's think about our next part, which is the, if I've got the resume headline, then I have education, I want to have an education listing. And I can think of writing a function that's education listing. It takes in a list, and I'm going to give it some list that I'm going to get from my resume data. That list would be right there. So that education listing gets the list, it's education. And right now it's going to be broken because I don't have that imported. So let's think this through. I'm not going to have an education listing here. I'm going to have an experience listing. And I'm going to give it experience. And over here on skills, I'm not going to have an experience listing. I'm going to have a skills listing. Now I could use the same function, but I'm just doing 3 different functions. Let us define a function for education listing. List. Oops, extra space there. And why don't we just return right now a placeholder, unordered list, list item, first item. So that's not going to be working. Let's do the other ones. Let's just do those three functions. We've got education. We have education, experience, and skills. Ah, nice. Okay, so that formats nicely. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start by replacing experience listing with actually something that's going to use list. The first thing that we want to think about is what would happen if list was empty or you have some other problem. So I'm going to say if that list doesn't exist or the list length is 0, I'm going to return back none. So you have no education. So if I go to, right now it's going to say none because education is not getting a list at all. Go to app.jsx, my resume data, this is saying my education is nothing. That's problematic. So why don't we console log resume data education and see if you actually see something. No. So I've imported resume data. Let's go look at resume data real fast. I've got this variable resume data. I export resume data. And when I console log resume data, I don't see anything. Let's see what's inside of it. Oh, okay. So we've got a bug. Resume data.js line 17. Ah, yes. I'm using equal sign when I should be using colon. Silly, silly me. Did I make that typo? No, okay. So education is none. Let's check this out. Let's make sure. Yes, so now we see that being printed out correctly. I had that silly typo over there. And now let's see about our education. And we get 3 objects. If we expand it out, we have an array. Those are the things I expect to see. So this should not be none. Come over to resume.jsx. We could print out over here education. And sometimes it's hard to see where it's coming from, so you might add another console log. Yep, so I see those 3 things there. Education listing is getting education right there, but it is saying none. Oh no, it's showing it. Sorry, it's showing up. So things are working out as we expect. Now we need to change this part right there. What we're going to do is we're going to use that handy mapping method. So I've got, I'm going to use an unordered list. I'm going to take that list. This list right here comes over here, and I'm going to map. And for every item inside that list, I'm going to create this. I don't think I made an h3 function, and I'm using it over here. So let me grab an h3 function. And now I've got that information. Oh, that's not being rendered correctly. That's okay. Fix it later. So here I am. I've got a function. It takes a list. I check to make sure the list has something in it. If it doesn't, I'm going to print something out. Otherwise, I'm going to create an unordered list. The close tag is right there. And for every item in there, I'm just going to print it out. I'm going to do the same thing for each of these guys right here. So for the experience list, same idea. I'm going to make sure that the list is not empty. And for the skills list, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make sure that the skills list is not empty. Now over here, if I don't give it any list, let's say I take out that part right there. So experience listing is not getting anything. You can see experience becomes none. Experience is none. Let me make this a little narrower. So its experience is none. And if I take out this list here, you can see experience and skills now become none. Put them back in. It's doing something. It's just not doing what I want. So now for experience, we're essentially going to do the same thing that we did for education. Same thing. But the fields don't match, right? So let's think, how can we get this to be correct? Resume data. My education is degree, institution, years. So I'm using my ID, my degree, the institution, and years, which are missing there because I typed it wrong. So I get that there. Then for this guy, for my experience, experience is ID, title, company, years. So I'm going to say ID, title, company, years. There you go. Got that all there. Now for skills, I'm going to do the same thing again. Replace this. Let's look at that data. I got Python Advanced. So I got name, proficiency, ID, name, proficiency. I'm going to have ID right there with the key, name, proficiency. Good years. And everything shows up. So for each one of these fields, I just did that, and I've got my resume. I might go back and format this a little bit nicer to make it narrower so it doesn't go the full width of the window. And now I need to do the contact form. Same idea. I've got my contact.jsx. So I'm going to import that right here. Add that as the next item here. Come over to contact.jsx. Let's export default function contact. And I've got that right down there. Before we move on, let's check in our work. So I'm going to git commit resume.jsx and data resume.data, comment of data typos, resume. Okay, needs formatting. And then we've got our app. added resume app and started on contact. And then we'll commit our component for contact. So far, so good. We're making progress. So now we want to finish up the contact form. We have it showing up. Look, we got our app.jsx. We've got the three parts, the bio, the resume, the contact. When we load up the page, you can see that it's all right there at the bottom. We just need to make it into a real life form. I've already got that cooked up off to the side, so I'm going to replace this with the form. This form has a heading for contact. We'll say hello. Now, because this is a form, it needs to tie into an action. As I said in the instructions, we're not going to have this form do anything. So there is no post or put or anything that is going to be the action for this form. So we're just going to fill it with a pound sign or a hashtag. We're going to have an input for our email, an input for the subject, and an input for the message. A little bit like a reminder here, when we do an input tag, typically in HTML, it does not have a close tag, so we have to remember to add our close right there. Same thing here for the subject. It's also an input box. Need to have a close right there. I'll leave one of them out just so I can show you what's going to happen. And then we finally have a text area, which is going to have the body of the message and a button. This is not very well formatted, so it's not going to look beautiful, but it's good enough. And this is the error that you'll get if you forget to close the tag input, because it says, oh, you opened this and you close that, but I expect to see that. So you can just go back here, put that close, and it'll work. Yeah, again, it's not beautiful. We should go back and fix it, but we got a box here where we can write our email address, as though we're going to write an email on this web form. Subject, love your work. And we can write a message here, blah, 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 blah. And then if it was all hooked up, we can push this button, send message, and it would work. It doesn't, all it does is it just reloads this page. But now we've got basically a home page done. We need to add, to meet the requirements of the homework assignment, we need to add one more image. But you got at least 2 fonts. You've got all your stuff there. It's a really basic homepage. With a little bit more time and effort, you can make this even more beautiful by putting in the formatting, the class names into all of our tags to get stuff formatted. So if we come back to our terminal, we made one change to one file. We're going to commit it. Okay, so now that that's done, remember, this was all done in the branch React homepage. If I if I look at what branches I have, I've got main and React homepage. If I load up my repository, here's my repository. If I refresh this page just so you can see, it currently has only the main branch. There's also the feedback branch, but that has nothing to do with what we did. And nothing's changed. So what I want to do is I want to, if I want to keep a copy of this in a separate branch, I need to remember to say git push it to origin. Origin is GitHub. I'm going to push to origin this branch. This branch is called React Homepage. And what it has done is over here, it now has, let's refresh this. It now has that branch, and I can switch to that branch in this user interface, and I can see all the things that I've done over here. I can also switch back to main. It also gives me this option to do a compare and pull. And that's what was printed out right here. So I can create a pull request by going to this URL. And I can do that right here. Or by going over here, I'll show you what this link looks like. Over here, so I can save my work, which is the more important part. I have 2 branches. And what I'm going to do on my local repository, because I need to save my work, I'm going to merge React homepage. And what that does is it's now merged locally on this computer, my 2 branches. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push all of my work back to my own repository. And my own repository is actually this one right here. I confused myself. I didn't notice that I accidentally went to the wrong place. And here I've got my 2 branches. I've got React homepage, which is all the work I just did in this video. And then I've got my main branch, which I just merged right now. So it's got all of my work too. And I still have NPM running the development server in the background, and it should load it up correctly. But because I've really screwed it up one more time, it's broken. Now, if you screw up your work, don't worry, I can always help you fix it. Let's get this running again. It's working. So what happened was with the switch, with me merging things around, NPM got confused, but you can see everything's still there. Everything's working. And the proof is in the pudding. So I'm going to kill my development server. I'm going to come over here, and if I've done everything correctly, I can delete all my work. It's gone permanently. I can delete all my work. I don't recommend that you do this. Grab that URL again and clone your repository over here. And if everything was done correctly, you run your development server one more time. Oops. Oh, if you clone your directory, I forgot. And you run npm install, and then you do run dev, everything will work perfectly. Again, everything will be back to normal. So that's your whole homework assignment from start to finish. Granted, I should format this a lot nicer, but I kept it simple. But it's your whole homework assignment from start to finish. over here, so I can save my work, which is the more important part, I have 2 branches. And what I'm going to do on my local repository, because I need to save my work, I'm going to merge React homepage. And what that does is it's now merged locally on this computer, my 2 branches. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push all of my work back to my own repository. And my own repository is actually this one right here. I confused myself. I didn't notice that I accidentally went to the wrong place. And here I've got my 2 branches. I've got React homepage, which is all the work I just did in this video. And then I've got my main branch, which I just merged right now. So it's got all of my work too. And I still have NPM running the development server in the background. And it should load it up correctly. But because I've really screwed it up one more time, it's broken. Now, if you screw up your work, don't worry, I can always help you fix it. Let's get this running again. It's working. So what happened was with the switch, with me merging things around, NPM got confused, but you can see everything's still there. Everything's working. And the proof is in the pudding. So I'm going to kill my development server. I'm going to come over here, and if I've done everything correctly, I can delete all my work. It's gone permanently. I can delete all my work. I don't recommend that you do this. Grab that URL again and clone your repository over here. And if everything was done correctly, you run your development server one more time. Oops. What did I do wrong? Oh, if you clone your directory, I forgot. And you run npm install, and then you do run dev, everything will work perfectly. Again, everything will be back to normal. So that's your whole homework assignment from start to finish. Granted, I should format this a lot nicer, but I kept it simple. But it's your whole homework assignment from start to finish.